Greetings and welcome to today's forum. Please welcome the Student Planning Committee Chair for Sport and Society Week, Lucas Monroe.
Welcome to day 2 of 3 days of fantastic panels brought to you by Penn Athletics and the Office of Social Equity and Community. For those who were here yesterday, welcome back. For those who were not able to be with us yesterday, you can rewatch last night's panel on our YouTube page at Social Equity and Community Penn. I recommend that because it was fantastic talk. So go check it out. Again, for those who weren't able to be with us yesterday, my name is Lucas Monroe. I'm the chair of the planning committee for this event and a member of the men's basketball team here at Penn. And I'm very happy to have all of you guys here for which is going to be another great experience. Hopefully it'll be even better than yesterday. So let's get right into it. It's my pleasure to pass the mic to Raven from women's volleyball, who's going to introduce tonight's panel and the fantastic panelists that we have.
Thank you, Lucas. Hi, everyone. My name is Raven Sulman. I am a senior majoring in communications, and I'm also on the women's volleyball team. And without further ado, I'm super excited to present today's panel, Representation and Identity in Sports, which will definitely discuss how elements of personal identity, the way that they're perceived, and their degree of visibility at different levels in sports may impact the athletic experience. This is such a super important topic, and I personally resonate with it a lot. So I'm really excited for today's panelists, which I'm about to introduce. So first we have Angela Jimenez, class of 1997. She's a freelance photographer for Getty Images and a New York Times contributor. And she's also a former Penn women's track and field student athlete. Next, we have Michael Sangobowale, class of 2005, and he's a medical science liaison at Eisai US Pharmaceuticals, and he's a former Penn football and men's track and field student athlete. Next, we have Catherine Kaw, class of 2019, and she's an associate consultant at KPMG Accounting, and she's a former Penn women's fencing student athlete. And last but not least, we have Madison Dawkins, class of 2019, who's currently a project coordinator at the Columbia Justice Lab, and she is a former Penn's women's soccer student athlete. And last but not least, we have our moderator for today, Reverend Chaz Howard, class of 2000, and he currently serves as Penn's vice president for social equity and community, as well as our university chaplain.
Thank you, Raven and Lucas. So proud of y'all. Not to sound like the doting old, dad that I am, but y'all are the best part of Penn. We really are so grateful for our student leaders, particularly the kind of great work that y'all have done in pulling this great panel together. So I'm so proud of you. I also wanted to give a shout out to Jose Tavarez, who was going to be on this panel, but I had to send his apologies. He had a very last minute kind of work conflict, and we'll look forward to roping him into a conversation in the future. Got to give a couple other quick shout outs too, besides Lucas and Raven. So many people worked hard on this, and I'm sure there'll be a proper shout out closing at the end, but the folks in athletics from Jen and Rosemary and Coach Graham and my guy Rudy Fuller, y'all have been fantastic in making this happen. And over on our side, Nicole Malloy, who was the moderator last night, has been super heroic in the work that she's done. And woman Jane of all trades, Mercedes Lee, has sort of been the detail coordinator for so many things. So really grateful for y'all and everyone in IT for making this happen. If I can go rogue a little bit, I know that we worked to some questions and shared with you some questions beforehand, but I was a part of an icebreaker earlier that I wanted to throw at y'all today. Real quick speed round. Who has been your favorite athlete, or which athlete have you connected with the most, past or present, and why? Can I start with Angela, and then we'll go to Catherine after that?
Well, I just have to take it back to my Jackie Joyner-Kersee poster on my wall, I think, as my original dream athlete.
The best, Catherine?
I think LeBron James, because I love his work on the court and off the court as well. Oh yeah, definitely. I'm very hyped for Space Jam too.
Listen, we get Penn alumni field trip to go watch that together. Madison and then Michael.
Following with the basketball athletes, Kobe Bryant, I grew up in Lower Merion, PA. Huge respect for his drive and just the standard he sets for himself as well as the whole team. So Kobe all the way.
Mamba, Michael.
And I have to go with Christian Okoye, Nigerian Nightmare. He's probably one of my favorite athletes just because what he represents. You know, we share the same heritage, same background. He has an incredible story of you know, how he came to playing football. He was also a dual sport athlete, so he was on track and field. He threw shot put and discus, and he was also a football player while he was in college. So, yeah. I
did not know he was a two-sport athlete.
Yeah.
There was an old video game, Tecmo Bowl, and if you played with him, he was a problem. I remember Christian Okoye. So. Oh, thank you all for invoking great names in the cloud of witnesses around us and sort of contemporary athletes today. Can I ask another sort of question, and we'll go in the same order this time. What do you think are some of the positive and negative assumptions that are made about student athletes in particular, be it at Penn or more broadly, some of the positive assumptions and some of the negative assumptions? And let's do the same order for this round. Angela, Catherine, Madison, then Michael, if you feel so inclined.
I would say like some of the, I'll just speak to an assumption. I think sometimes folks project on student athletes that maybe they have an easier time getting into school, getting through school, and kind of coming out into their lives. And I think that kind of reflects both positively in the fact that people really look at student athletes as being capable, as like juggling a lot of things in their lives, but also as maybe like skating through academically or being supported financially. And students, I think student athletes carry a lot of responsibilities and sometimes a lot of debt and like other kind of burdens through their experience. So that kind of doesn't give the whole picture. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like so many positive associations. Like when you think about team building, time management, and everything else, like that's something that employers do look for. But then when it comes to in school, I mean, we have the stereotype of like the partying student athlete. Definitely building off what Angela says, like you definitely think that you're kind of like quote unquote in the jock class of, I guess, in college, even though that we're not in high school anymore. But that stereotype never goes away.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. To follow that, I think negatively, just that we're disengaged in the classroom or don't really have academic drive. But at the same time, the positive side, I think we are looked to as leaders and people really listen to what athletes have to say. We see it on campus, we see it nationally with NBA, the NWSL. So it's kind of a two-sided coin where a lot of like the negatives can be viewed as the positives, but same around, vice versa.
Yeah, and just sort of echoing what everyone has already said, you know, at least from my perspective, you know, one of the positives that I've seen just throughout my career and with what I do now is that, you know, you're viewed upon as someone who can be a team player. You know, you've sort of gone through the ropes, you've had to work with other people. So it's really good when you're working with teams and just sort of getting to understand people and the interpersonal dynamics. You know, a lot of that they view as something that you can do because you've had to do that throughout your career. And then I guess, you know, echoing what everyone else has said, just viewed as someone who was in school for one particular thing. You know, you sort of got in maybe a little bit, an easier road than, you know, especially at an Ivy League school than the other students in terms of how you were accepted into the university. So that would be one of the, I guess, negative things that you sort of have heard when you first got into school and you sort of hear down the line as well.
I really appreciate your answers. You know, the longer I've spent time with student athletes here at Penn, I think the first thing that I think about, one of the assumptions I make is like extraordinarily hard worker and like weirdly good time manager for 18 to 22-year-olds. If you talk to a student athlete and you ask about their schedule, the demand on their time, I'm clearly preaching to the choir here, is bananas. like to give a chunk of just about every day, not just in your active season where there's competition, but like kind of preseason. And sports like track, there is no off season really, this is a really hard demand, and to squeeze classes in before and after that. And sometimes you're lifting in the morning and sometimes it's just a lot. And then to come and be in another club, like an a cappella group or something. So I've always had maybe this isn't nice to say, but an extra layer of respect for student athletes on at Penn. Y'all went hard and they go hard today. One of the interesting things about life here in the States, in America, is that we have this kind of hyphenated world, hyphenated life. We speak of Asian Americans and African Americans and Muslim Americans and Jewish Americans. I think it's similar around athletics sometimes, where if you layer the identity of athlete over different identities that are based on one's race or ethnicity or nationality, their sex, their socioeconomic status, their sexual orientation, their faith, their religion. The question I would ask is, what changes when you add the hyphen, when you add Black athlete, queer athlete, Asian athlete, IB athlete? What changes there? And to put it another way, if there are already these perceptions of one as a person who identifies how you all specifically do, how does that perception shift when you add athlete to that identity? Why don't we go in the reverse order this time? Why don't we do Michael, Madison, Catherine, then Angelo?
So I guess, for me, from that perspective and understanding it sort of gives a different perspective on how people see you from the second you walk into a room. As you go through the process of understanding one as a Black student athlete, one as an Ivy League student athlete, there are sometimes positive connotations that do help you out when you're, presenting yourself to a group of people, and, that identity does go with you, and it does help in the sense that you're perceived as someone who's not only an athlete, but you did do it and you succeeded at an Ivy League school. So from that perspective, you can take that positive from it. And then in the same sort of light, seen as someone who also benefited from something, because, at least from my perspective, you're benefiting from being not only an athlete, you're also benefiting from being an African-American student athlete. So, from that side of things, you're seen as someone who, maybe got some sort of advantage in how you are made it to where you are based on those two identifying factors, rather than you just being, a student who was accepted into the school. I'm seen as a African-American athlete who was accepted into an Ivy League school. So that, from my perspective, those are sort of the things that, as a student, years back, you sort of had to grapple with that sort of identity and understanding how people were seeing you at the university and in that space.
Thank you, Doc.
I think oftentimes people will use the hyphen and any identifier to kind of take away the success that is earned by an individual. I think many times it kind of undermines the accomplishments and really kind of confines you to a box. And I think a lot of times we talk about identity and we talk about intersectionality and how dynamic people are, but when we're leading with labels, it's often hard to really get to the root of who a person is or what they bring to the table. A lot of the work I do is bringing people along, and just to give more context, I work for a project called the Square One Project. It's all about generating ideas to achieve true justice and public safety, and we do that with a ton of different stakeholders, including prosecutors, law officials, community organizers. So truly everyone, bring them along. And I think a lot of times people will lead by their role, and there's so much more to everyone's identity than the work that they do or the sport that they played. So that is.
Yeah, and building off of that, whenever you add that hyphen, it's always like it's like kind of like an improv. It's like yes and, or in this side is like no but. But I think from a perspective like an IB athlete, when you have that in your resume, that's when you're like, oh, that's a signal to employers like, oh, this person clearly did a lot in college. And then that's also an indicator, which ties into all these other weird hiring things, just coming from like my perspective as a consultant. But then when you add in like your other identities on top of that, then it's this complete competing, like I suppose like competing identities that you've mentioned earlier, Madison, really well. And I think that it's very interesting to see how that competes, like how you present yourself and how other people perceive you.
Is that me now? I was just so into listening to what everyone was saying. I mean, I first of all, I think I just wanted to say that as somebody who graduated in '97, a long time ago, I so appreciate this conversation and so respect these students for bringing these topics forward. There was not this kind of space when I was a student, and I was like in the process of coming out, so that queer hyphen had not really emerged for me at that time. And so I just like have a lot of respect for the evolution and the political complexity with which people are thinking at such an earlier age than I was able to. And I appreciated what you all said about this. And I guess it's like thinking about the hyphenated identities as being, you know, are they perceived as qualifying or disqualifying around how people value you as a person? And I work in journalism now, and my new job is I'm a visuals editor at a publication called I Ponder, and we do a lot of stories that are like hopefully going to be used around diversity, inclusion, and equity programming. And even just using that queer label, like going into my career, is different than racial identity in that I'm a gender conforming person. So there's a reveal that a person does not have a choice around their racial identity. But that's been something that I've been able to walk openly with in my career, and been able to find places where that was a qualifying rather than a disqualifying characteristic. But I think that's a challenge that we all have walking through the world. So,
Angela, I so appreciate everybody's comments, but I really, your words kind of grabbed my heart. You know, you, Nicole and I were on campus similar time, and I tell students things can change. I have no memories of two men or two women holding hands walking down Locust Walk when I was a student. And the LGBT center on campus literally was up in an attic, you know, near where the alumni house is now. And now I've done 3 gay weddings this year, 2 for Penn people, and there are a number of out students on campus, and it's not perfect, but the climate truly has changed. And if I can give a shout out to Penn Athletics, by the way, there's this thing called the Athletic Equality Index that was just released, this ranking on athleteally.org, and only 10 NCAA D1 schools received perfect ranking for LGBTQ plus inclusive policies and practices in their sports programs, and only one Ivy League school got that perfect ranking, and that was Penn, which I think is a testament to the leadership down there of our administrators, and you know the work Grace has done and the work Rudy's done and others, but really the climate that our students have created. So I, you know, as someone who's a perpetual Penn Quaker fan, yet another reason to cheer for y'all. I'm so grateful. And thank you all for sharing personally about how perceptions change when people sort of hear about it. There's a lot more to say about it. Can I turn to you, Madison, real quick? So you don't know this, but you lived in my house for a couple years, in that my middle daughter, Tuki, had the Penn women's soccer team poster. That was
I love it.
in her room. And so she knew you and was a groupie of yours and cheered for you. And so you've been blessing young people in ways you don't even know. I want to ask you a question though, because she so appreciated you, not just because of your brilliance on the field and the fact that you were like a Lower Merion head too, but because she saw a Black woman playing her sport, a sport that she's on every team she's been on. She's been the only Black girl on every soccer team she's played on. That changes when it's basketball season and the makeup looks a little bit different. Can I ask you all, and starting with Madison, can you speak a little bit more specifically about your sport, or Doc, your sports, about your experience of being who you are in that sport context and potentially in the time period that you all played? Is it different in your sport than it would be in other sports? Madison, can we kick off with you?
Definitely. So growing up, I mean, soccer is a predominantly white sport. On all of my travel leagues, I was maybe one of two Black players on the field. It was hard. I also went to a predominantly white school, so I didn't have a lot of places where I felt represented or I felt a lot of support. And I think definitely looking up to people you admire is huge. For me, it was Sydney Leroux, who was a national women's team player. So I think it's always really important to find people who look like you and listen to what they have to say about their experiences and how they made it through. And for me, I really I have such a strong love for the game. And I think although it was hard, I always found so much strength and empowerment by getting to do what I loved at the end of the day. I'll tell a story. When I was in high school, it was around signing day, and there's a girl who I played with all my life. She was a white soccer team player. We played high school together, we played club together, and around signing, she started this rumor that I wasn't actually committed to Penn and I didn't deserve to go there. And it was really hard for me. I'm like, oh, I questioned whether it had to do with race or whether she just thought I was undeserving or I didn't work hard enough or my standards were different from her standards. So I feel like constantly when I'm in rooms where I'm the only Black woman, I always have that on my shoulders. And I really try to, it's something I have to unpack and work through. And I was very lucky to be on Penn Women's Soccer and kind of a exceptional experience where there were multiple Black women on the team. My freshman year, I think there was about 6 of us, which was really, really empowering. And it was also during the time where Colin Kaepernick was kneeling in the NFL, and we had a lot of serious conversations around race, and was the first time I was able to have these conversations with my soccer teammates and feel as though they were listening. And I think the great things about sports is that it brings so many people together. And I think on a team specifically, you really rely on everyone, whether that's someone who plays all 90 minutes of the game or someone who is a practice player. Everyone has a role. And I think there's a lot of beauty in diversity in sports because within that role, you have to find respect for each other. You have to find ways to communicate. You have to see each other at the end of the day. So while it is a challenge, I will always be up for it. I think it's so beautiful that I was able to bring people together just by being who I am and just by offering a voice when I had it, giving my perspective, but also at the same time being in a community where I felt comfortable to do that and I felt supported to do that.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry your old high school teammate did that.
Sorry. Made me stronger at the end of the day. So thank you to her.
Anybody else want to jump in about your specific identity on your team, your sport, and in your team?
I could maybe just jump in on that. Thank you for sharing all that, Madison. Just to jump in on the experience of being in community with your team. Like for me, I think the whole time growing up, all through high school and all through college, and speaking about my Penn track team in particular, I mean, they were my family, they were my sorority, and I still consider them family. And it's just an amazing community of people. And we've all gone through a lot of changes. And I went through the process of coming out and, you know, all of the fears that brings up and all of the discomfort, but we're a lot of very different people. And I've always like felt really grateful for, had a really different experience at Penn, I think, than some other students who weren't involved in sports. I'll never know what that experience would have been, and I'm glad because I'm just grateful for it. And I didn't have the experience of continuing in my sport after college, but I did keep participating in recreational sports. And actually, one of the first and healthiest ways that I found community was through sports. You know, instead of going out to a bar and like getting drunk and feeling alone, you know, or whatever you do when you're in your 20s and you don't quite know where you're at. You know, I found a community of women. I joined this soccer team that was sponsored by a gay bar, and they were like my first friends in Brooklyn, and it set me on a really different path. And that was a continuation really of my people at Penn. And I think about it that way. So, because you think about like, what does that have to do with anything as you go through your life, you know? And I hear what Madison's doing. Like you're always unpacking it, and you're always translating it into how to go forward in your life. So it has value.
It's a really cool example of how teammates can be teammates even off the field or off the court, and sort of supporting us and journeying with us as we grow and kind of come into ourselves. So really beautiful example, even like post-college teammates. So really cool. Mm-hmm. Michael or Catherine, did you want to jump in about identity in your sport specifically?
I mean, I guess for me, you know, being the football team, when I was sometimes over 100 players on the team, the years that I was there, you know, I feel like the makeup of the team wasn't as diverse as it is now. You know, I feel like there's a lot more diversity in the players. You know, I know for my group coming in, there might have been 5 Black players within my cohort. So on the overall team, maybe there were about 10 or 12 out of the 100. So, you know, I know those numbers are a little bit different now, which is, you know, great for the players that are playing right now. But, you know, even little things just coming in, you know, this is dating myself a little bit, but, you know, early 2000s, and just the, you know, my perception coming from New York, growing up in the Bronx, you know, that was when there was waves, and just coming in with my do-rag and people not understanding, you know, what that was, or, you know, only the few people that could connect with me were the other people from like North Jersey or from Chicago. You know, just like little things like that, sort of, not that they have an impact on you, but being able to connect with people and, you know, not having to sort of explain what that is for someone, but it also serves as an opportunity to sort of enlighten people about the things about yourself and the things about your community that they might not have been aware of. So, you know, even throughout all of those experiences that I had, I feel like those were good opportunities for me as well. Just, you know, being able to open myself up to the other people on the team and express myself and my culture in ways that for people that may not have been aware of those things. So, you know, I feel like within that opportunity, I feel like I was able to be myself, and I was lucky to have a small cohort of people that, you know, are still my friends today, that we went through the whole program together.
Love the way you framed that, an opportunity for education and community building. Well said. Catherine?
Yeah, so for the fencing team, I think it's been relatively diverse overall. I mean, when I came in, I definitely remember it was one of the first times I wasn't like the only Asian at a tournament, for example, which has happened before, especially when you're in like your younger years and it's like a smaller tournament. And I remember vividly when I was going through the recruiting process and talking to them, the fact that we had Coach Ma here, who is Asian and is the head coach, was super significant about my decision, just because it shows like a commitment to diversity as well inside of the program, and also it was nice to also have that kind of aspect. And I was really fortunate to be able to meet all these different kinds of people, and then be able to talk about my identity very openly, and be able to kind of have a second family with my teammates.
So important for coaching staff and sort of support staff, and then, you know, broadly and professionally, kind of team ownership and team management, to I think reflect the athletes as well as fans and its location. So I appreciate you invoking coach there. That's fantastic. Can I pivot toward a question about your experience of bearing witness to other athletes? And by that, I mean, what has it been like for you to see other athletes with your sort of intersecting identities, be it in college or professional sports or in coaching or ownership or management? Has that meant anything to you, seeing other athletes who check some of the boxes that you do? And are there any particular athletes that have kind of connected in a special way? Can we work from Catherine? Can we work up Catherine, Madison, Michael, and Angela?
Yeah, I think from not my sport necessarily, but like the Shib Sibs when they were going and ice dancing at one point. I mean, I think that really connected just because it was something that you wouldn't necessarily see from like an Asian American perspective, and they did so well, which was awesome. And then it kind of shows that, hey, it's not necessarily just like, oh, just figure skating and whatnot. You can also do other things. And I think that they helped kind of break that Asian identity where everyone's like, you're super smart, you're sort of athletic maybe occasionally, but they're just so engaging and just wonderful.
I mentioned Cindy LaRue earlier, but I think for me, I just love seeing Black women do what they love, especially in athletics. So whether it's basketball, just seeing like the players smile after like making a shot, or just little things like that, where you realize like how much the game means to them and how much joy they get from being able to do what they love every day and being unapologetically themselves. I think that's what resonates with me the most. And I think it's just really powerful. So I think whether on the field or what I do professionally, I always just want to like find my love for it, find my why, find my passion, and show up every day like I show up to practice and work to be the best.
I think for me, my perspective is a little bit different, in the sports in terms of male or Black athletes in terms of football and basketball. For me, a lot of the excitement and thing that motivates me is when people move into coaching roles and they get those opportunities. And, now with how things have changed and how things have gotten a lot better, seeing head football coaches in the NFL who are African-American, or head basketball coaches, even on the women's side this year in the Final Four, just seeing, African-Americans that are succeeding beyond the athletic scope of things. So, the athletic part of it, I think, has been fairly positive, for the last few years, but now really seeing people excel into those more even management or coaching type roles is what sort of gets me excited and keeps me motivated to really see people excelling at that level beyond the athletic portion of things.
Absolutely. I love that. I just feel like sports is such a reflection of our society, and like watching the women's Final Four, and there were 2 female Black coaches in the women's Final Four this year. And it's like that is progress. And yeah, those levels of management and, some of the roles as athletes there have been glass ceilings of different kinds too, but it takes a lot to make those prejudices fall and to like open up those opportunities more fairly. And I feel like I'm going to point to Megan Rapinoe for like on multiple fronts, because she's a white athlete who I feel like learned a lot politically and used her platform in solidarity and to be outspoken about racial justice, and to take what unfortunately is still, it's a bigger risk for Black athletes, just like it is on the street, to speak out about those issues. But I respect that. And also I think like there's always an intersection between like gender equity and, women's sports. So I really admire like watching all of the people who have fought so hard to advance women's sports. So she's out there like running these lawsuits against the, against the league for salary equity, and also just being out and proud as a queer athlete. So those are like, I admire all of those different characteristics.
Everyone you all invoked me, and the situations you invoked means so much, but it's hard not to get emotional thinking about Megan Rapinoe and the national team's run, but her courage on a couple different fronts, and then the success on the field at the same time. Every time she would score, it's hard not to tear up. And we all last year, or 2 years ago, we're wearing T-shirts. It's Rapinoe 2020 was sort of like the T-shirts we were wearing around the house. We're so proud of her and excited for her. Did your time at Penn as athletes, as student athletes, as students here at Penn, how did it prepare you for your lived like post-college lives? And can you point back to that time as students here at Penn who are on different teams? How is it formative for your life post-college? Anybody here, and whoever feels led to jump in, please.
Extremely formative, specifically relating to time management. While I was an athlete, I also started an undergraduate organization, and I also volunteered in the Philadelphia jail, the women's jail. It's called the Riverside Correctional Facility, where I taught mindfulness classes. And in order to show up and be my full self in all of these activities, I had to learn how to compartmentalize and truly focus when I was doing each activity and prepare what I needed to allow myself to do that. So academically, I had to make sure I was on schedule and I was on track. Soccer, in addition to our standard practice times, there's more work you have to do. There's homework for your sport. And now I'm balancing 2 full-time jobs in addition to my work at the Square One Project. I'm the campaign manager for District 7 City Council candidate Sean Abreu in New York. And I have very, very long work weeks, early mornings and late nights, but I've done it before. I've had the practice, I put in the time, and my experience as an athlete has made it all possible. And I think also just learning to persist under pressure. There were so many high stakes situations on the field where you had to remember specific plays or just stay calm and execute at the end of the day. And specifically working on this city council campaign, there's a lot of fires that you have to put out daily, and I'm able to stay consistent and reliable, and that's the best thing for the campaign and the best thing for the candidate. So I've learned so much through being a student athlete. I honestly talk to my experiences every day in my personal life and professionally. I just feel ready and I feel prepared, and I think so. I graduated 2 years ago, and I'm not afraid to jump in or speak my mind. And I think a lot of that has to do with athletics. You have to be prepared. You have to kind of roll with the punches. I often say, like, it's showbiz. You got to keep it moving. We don't have time to get upset over a single play on the field, because you have to just like compartmentalize and keep it moving forward, or else the whole game is thrown off. So mindset, time management, there's so much I've taken away from my experience as a student athlete.
Oh, busy. My goodness. And thank you
Oh
for
my God, what's the company you're starting? Let's go. Let's go.
I need so after the second, I'm gonna take a deep breath and then I'll get back at it.
go. Anyone else?
I guess similar to what Madison just said, for me, especially, with the career path that I've chosen, being a 2-sport athlete and being pre-med and taking science classes while playing a sport in school, it sort of prepared me for, I feel like, all of the next facets that happen in life, preparing for medical school, preparing and getting, understanding how to be a parent, succeeding at my job, just, every aspect of the challenges that you face as a student athlete, the struggles that you go through, and how you learn to adapt quickly. And, as Madison said, just keep it moving. That's just how life works. You can't sort of, you have a bad play, you get up, you go, and the next play is going to happen, whether you're prepared for it or not. Like, that's the same thing with life. You just sort of have to keep things moving, and, a lot of those perspectives and a lot of those challenges. And I feel like my time as a student athlete and going through as, the academic part of things has really prepared me for a lot of the things in the next stages of my life. Just, having to deal with studying for 10 to 12 hours straight and then having to get things done. You're prepared for the things that some people are just not used to, or they're just, just haven't had to sort of go through those struggles as someone who's just a student, so for me, I feel like, having that, as we talked about earlier, that connotation as student athlete gives you something to sort of, in ways you can pat your chest and say, I've had more challenges. I've had to do more than the average student. And, at the end of the day, with me doing more, we're graduating from the same place. So, that's how I look at it sometimes.
Angela or Catherine, did you want to add anything?
I hear Michael's confidence, and I love it so much. And I think like that is something that you really develop as an athlete. Maybe that's innate to you. You may have already had that, and that's what led you to it in the first place. But just the confidence, I went into photojournalism after undergrad, and which was kind of a departure, but it's sort of like this, it made no sense, and it made all the sense in the world. And it took a lot of physical confidence to be a woman going into that field. And I feel like that my sports gave me that. And I also really come back to absolutely like to working hard. And I come back to the team again. I mean, just like my teammates, just these amazing, smart, powerful women who went out into the world and did all these different things, So knowing them through the years and watching what they were doing really just continued to inspire me, because there were like ups and downs, especially in professional path that I chose. So that's something, sometimes you wonder like what the practical application of it was, because it's not necessary. Sometimes I'm chasing my kids around and I'm like, okay, that's that. I keep the old rusty body going, but truly there is that, what we got from our coaches and what we got from our teammates, that support system, and that sense of like, you can go out there and you can do what you want to do with your life. Like that stuff is deep and you carry it with you, I think.
Yeah, definitely building off that confidence. I mean, from graduating Penn 2 years ago, now I'm look at any challenge that I see, I'm like, oh yeah, this is easy compared to undergrad. This is fine, no matter what, just because when you are at an Ivy League school and you are an athlete, like, it's a lot. And so after going through all of those different challenges, you definitely learn a lot of soft skills, the leadership, how to communicate with different people, the time management, but also like, I think after overcoming so many challenges, talking to different people, you come out so well prepared for anything and whatever you do.
Great answers. I wish we could play those round of answers on like our Penn website. It'd be great recruiting for Penn and Penn athletics. Y'all are fantastic. We're starting to come down toward the end of our time, but I wanted to ask a question that's in my ear right now around. You remember the comments that came toward LeBron around shut up and dribble, shut up and play. This notion that athletes are meant, you have one job, and that is sort of performing on the field, the court, or the track, and entertaining and representing and working hard, and like, that's great. You have a uniform on. We don't want to hear anything about your politics, who you're voting for, who you shouldn't vote for, what should happen in a public space. if you could, one, your thoughts on that, and then two, could you imagine potentially as a college athlete again, or as a professional athlete, somehow stepping out and saying something about injustices in the world? And what could it look? I mean, it's hard to sort of hypothesize about what that could look like, but it's become such an important conversation around sports today. And to be fair, I think there is a difference between college athletes and professional athletes. I think there's a different power dynamic and a different sort of freedom in some senses. But what do you think about that? Just shut up and dribble, run, kick, stab. You know, you don't call it stabbing, Catherine. Shut up and sort of play. What do you think?
And whack someone with a sword, you know.
Shut up and wax. Whack. Please, your thoughts.
I mean,
I'll jump in. I feel like, this day and age, in terms of, the advent of social media and how accessible people are, I think that, whether athletes like it or not, they do serve as role models for people in whatever facet or whatever aspect of life people choose to view them as. And I think that, you can't really, in one sense, separate a person from who they are. If you're going to take the time to invest in someone as an athlete, you have the choice to invest in them as a person as well. So I feel like it's important to allow athletes to still be able to express who they are as people. At the end of the day, when all the sports are done, we're all people regardless. So, having to sort of reduce someone to just an athlete, or these, sort of hyphenated things that we were talking about earlier, sort of minimizes the impact that someone can have. Being an athlete is still a portion of someone's identity. So I feel like, as an athlete who may be African American, as an athlete who may be queer, as an athlete who may be, of any sort of race, you should be able to speak out and address any of the issues that you find important to yourself. And people have the option to, just like they can be you're a fan or not, they can listen to what you have to say or not. So that's just my sort of perspective on that.
Yeah, and if I can just call that one how I see it too, I feel like that's a white supremacist trap. That's what I think that is, because I think when you talk about sport of basketball and you see how many routes are opening to being a millionaire, in American society, right? So we're going to give you this option for attaining that level of celebrity and that level of income. But then once you get there, you can't speak your mind. So that is, that's, I think it's racist censorship, frankly. And I think it usually falls along those lines, the blowback to that kind of speaking out. So it's like, absolutely, this is America, and money talks and fame talks, and folks who have those positions are going to use those positions to speak their minds and to try to affect social change. And like Michael was saying, you can, be free to boycott a company or frequent that company or follow that athlete or not. But I think what it's shown too is, like, when the winds of change are moving in the positive direction, I think those voices are really powerful and they make a difference. And that would be a loss to not let people speak and use their platforms.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times Black athletes are silenced. And I think LeBron James' persistence and everything he does with the promise schools, children seeing that everywhere, seeing him continue to be unapologetically himself and speaking his mind, no matter what noise is around him, no matter who's saying what or offering their unwarranted opinions, is so powerful. So I think just beyond him increasing awareness, he's inspiring so many kids that look like me to just keep on going and find power in the uncomfort and know that you're making a ripple effect in the world.
Yeah, and I think it's always important to make sure that we don't put ourselves into these boxes. Like we're always going to be more than athletes, right? That's just one aspect of our identity. And, just as people, yes, if we have a platform to go ahead and make change and make an impact and make the world a better place, of course, we should always use that.
I don't want this conversation to stop. And so if I can sneak one last question before I turn it back over to Lucas, and one more quick speed round. Favorite moment from undergrad? Is there a moment that sort of sticks out to you, that still makes you smile, that you cherish? Favorite moment from undergrad here at Penn? And why don't we do Michael, Madison, Catherine, then Angela?
One of my favorite moments has to be when college game day came to our campus. First time they ever came to FCS school in the history of college game day. We were playing Harvard. We ended up beating them by about 30 points, won the Ivy League championship. So that would have to be one of my favorite sports memories from being at Penn.
You didn't have to throw salt on their wound like that. You're a doctor. You're supposed to heal, but you're breaking hearts still. Man, that's fantastic.
For me, it's winning the Ivy League on our senior night. Incredible experience with my favorite people in this world. So I'll always cherish that memory on Rhodes Field.
I think it's me. I have to admit, it was probably the one, we always had this one road trip to Ohio that we'd always go. And my freshman year, you just watched Mean Girls. And I feel like we bonded so much as a team while watching. It was the first time I've ever seen it. And it was just such a great team building moment and showed how we like each other off the fencing strip too.
Yeah. I was going to go with the indoor championship, but truthfully, shout out to our beloved coach, Betty Costanza. We used to have an end of the, and Tony Tanisi was our assistant coach. We used to have an end of the season banquet. And I don't know really what happened, but it's just laughing. It's just like nobody in my whole entire, and I like to laugh. Nobody has ever made me laugh as hard as these women make me laugh. Like we would just tell stories and just razz each other and just sing stupid songs and just joy, just like pure joy. And that I still remember that. Yeah. And it still happens when we get together, but.
Thank you all so much. You blessed me. And I know I speak on behalf of everybody who's watching and who'll watch the recording in the future too. I'm really proud of you all, for all that you did and all you're doing and who you are. You make us Penn proud. And so hurrah to all of you. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Brother Lucas to close this out. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a pleasure. And as I close it out, I kind of want to reiterate something that Angela mentioned at the beginning about how these conversations weren't necessarily happening when she was in school. I think that's one of the special things about Penn is not only do we have students who are willing to hold events like this and have these conversations, but we also have a university that is encouraging them to do so. And I think that's amazing. And because of that, we have incredibly proud alumni who are willing to come back and have these conversations and have these amazing conversations, I can say, because like I said, that was truly a pleasure to listen to you guys. So Reverend Howard, thank you so much. For those of you who don't know, one of the most amazing people in the world, truly a fantastic man. Angela, Michael, Catherine, and Madison, thank you guys so much. That was a wonderful talk. We really appreciate you guys coming back and speaking to the audience. We appreciate you. For those who were here yesterday and today, thank you for your consistency. We hope to see you tomorrow. And again, in the meantime, keep following the event, keep tracking the event, check out our social media pages. You can find Social Equity and Community on Instagram and Facebook at Social Equity at Penn, and on Twitter at SEC Penn. You can also follow Penn Athletics, who is enjoy your night, enjoy your week.